begin. Good day and welcome to this 3Es of Legal Electronic Records Management conference call. As a reminder, this call is being recorded. At this time, I'd like to turn the call over to Kelly Winter. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to Part 3 of our 3Es of Legal webinar series, Electronic Records Management. Building on the previous installments of e-discovery and email management, during this presentation, we will explore the importance of utilizing retentions and implementing effective methodologies for end-user compliance. We're pleased to welcome back many of you from previous events, as well as any newcomers in our audience today. We're just about ready to start. We have a full agenda today, but we will take questions at the end if time permits. If you have a question for one of our presenters today, press the Q&A tab at the top of your screen to open the question and answer panel. As always, we thank you for your time and look forward to presenting to you today. At this time, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Tammy Fabian. Tammy is a consultant for Axyon Consulting. Her experience extends to different industries of business, including authentication, financial services, insurance, real estate, and the energy sector. She has worked in various departments, including human resources, operations, and compliance, which has provided her with an essential understanding of the importance of business processes, company policies, and records retention. She has served as a compliance officer and financial operations officer for a broker and dealer in the Dallas area, and she previously held credentials of a Series 7, 63, 24, and 27. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to Tammy. Tammy, please go ahead.
Thank you, Kelly. Today we'll be talking about electronic records management, but first we're going to step back in time and look at the development of records management, and then how records management has progressed. I'm sorry? Next, we'll give a file cabinet illustration of how the companies and departments can start managing records electronically, helping the records managers maintain company records while having the everyday users participate in a records management process. Then we'll have a demonstration of the records management of OpenText Content Server. Records management has a very long history, one that begins about 10,000 years ago, before the emergence in the 1940s of a field that came to be called explicitly records management. Records management could possibly be the oldest profession, though I am curious on what the first profession is. Records have been kept on many different physical forms, though back then the most familiar is paper. A common practice in the past for records would be an employee, whether they were the creator or consumer of the paper. When they deemed the record to have some value, whether it would be for historical, operations, regulatory, or for litigation reasons, that record then would be handed off to the records manager, who would then file that record. If the employee needed to reference that record again, the employee would go to the records manager, describe the document, and then the records manager would hand the employee the document. Now, that would be in a perfect world. Actually, what more likely would happen is the employee would be given a stack of physical documents and folders to thumb through in hopes of finding that particular document requested. Records management was very much a hands-on process, which only a few really understood how records were cataloged and filed. Today, it's estimated that 90% of those records being created are electronic. There are documents in many different forms. You have Word documents, Excel documents, CAD drawings, PowerPoint. Plus you have scanned documents, usually saved in the format of a PDF. There's emails, as discussed in the second part of the 3Es webinar, and media files, including pictures, voice recordings, and video files. This is just an example of electronic documents that take up 90% of the records today. Can you imagine how much time and energy a company would use if they, quote unquote, followed the same old methodology of records management to handle electronic records? For instance, an employee that receives just an email or creates a document of importance then would hand that document over to the records management department to file for safekeeping. How efficient would that be both in time and cost, for each employee throughout the organization to go to the records management department to retrieve those documents that are needed. Now remember, the employee is not familiar with the records management filing system or the cataloging, and the records manager could lack the important information regarding that document since they were not the original owner or consumer and could have misfiled it, which I'm afraid happens more frequently than not. The file cabinet analogy will hopefully shed some light on how to use electronic records management system to manage records in today's world. The goal is two parts. The first part is having records managers manage records effectively, keeping records together through their retention period and destroying records when the retention period is met. And two, having employees find records that have been classified without the assistance of a records manager, saving time and cost. So let's begin. Let's start with the basic filing cabinet using physical records. As shown, here's one file cabinet with 3 drawers. Inside each drawer are folders, which contain various papers. When you need a document, you go to the file cabinet, open a drawer, pull out a folder, and retrieve the document you need. Now let's say you file everything in a color-coded methodology. So let's say you have all the general correspondence in a yellow folder. This folder would include emails, general emails, faxes, internal memos, letters, and other various forms of general correspondence. For every red folder, you put in contracts. This would include many types of contracts, NDAs, service agreements, development agreements, etc. Perhaps the engineering department calls contracts agreements, and Sue in maintenance calls contracts service deals. This would still all be put in the red folder. Contracts, agreements, service deals are different terminology used for contracts throughout the organization. And lastly, every PO, purchase order, and its supporting documentation goes in a green folder for purchase orders. Now, we take this that we have established and we create a functional classification plan, which is widely used by records managers. A file cabinet with a functional classification plan would look like this. The first drawer of the cabinet would have all green folders containing all purchase orders for every department. In a functional classification plan, purchase orders are part of the procurement classification grouping. The second drawer of a file cabinet would have all red folders containing all contracts from every department. Functionally, contracts are in a legal classification grouping. And the third drawer of the file cabinet would have all yellow folders containing all the general correspondence throughout the whole organization. Functionally, general correspondence is usually listed as administration classification grouping. So what are the pros and cons to this? With this type of filing, the pros would be, 1, it is easy for the records managers to file the record. It keeps all record types together, making it much easier to administer the records management program, especially when it comes to the retention period of those records. The cons of a functional plan would be, 1, it's difficult for the employees to find information, especially when all record types are grouped together. They would have to thumb through the folders from other departments and theirs as well in order to find the information they're needing. Even though it's still, let's say, in the red folder, they would still have to go through every single red folder to find their information. Number 2, the records managers know how the drawers are arranged, requiring their time to assist in helping an employee find the